The Dynamic Spectrum Alliance, or DSA, is a global organisation working for laws and regulations that will lead to a more efficient and effective spectrum utilisation around the world. Its global summit comes to London next May, and Total Telecom TV today has an exclusive interview with its president, Kalpak Gude. Kalpak, thanks for speaking to us. First of all, tell us why the work that you're doing, why it's so important to the telecoms industry.
I think spectrum is very much the lifeblood of telecommunications right now, and spectrum scarcity is one we've been dealing with as an industry for quite a long time. The only way we're going to solve that problem and move past spectrum scarcity is using technologies like dynamic sharing of spectrum. Spectrum, the reality of spectrum today is that most spectrum is unutilized or underutilized most of the time in most places. Dynamic spectrum access technology can unlock that blocked spectrum and make it available for new services. And that's really the exciting nature of dynamic sharing. It can change the way we think of spectrum.
Now the summit, I think it's the 6th summit since you were formed, is coming to London in May. So why London and why Europe?
We are very excited to bring it to London, to bring it to Europe for the first time. We've had, as you mentioned, 5 previous summits. They've been in all other parts of really the developing world. We've had it in Asia multiple times. We've had it in Africa. We've had it in Latin America. We're so excited about bringing it to Europe because the reality is, between the United States and Europe, these really are the leading regulators in spectrum. Europe is taking a very strong role in driving greater and more modern spectrum management tools going forward. We think dynamic sharing needs to be part of that story, and so coming here to London, coming to Europe and talking directly with European regulators, we think this is the right time and the right place.
What do you think will be the main areas of debate?
I think there are a number of areas, specific bands that we think are of great urgency today. One is TV white space in low-band spectrum. We think there's a lot of interest in mid-band spectrum as well. The 3.5 up to 4.2 spectrum is really interesting. Finally, the 6 gigahertz spectrum in mid-band is also very exciting for Wi-Fi type services. Finally, there is so much talk and energy around millimeter wave. Trying to identify opportunities for unlicensed or lightly licensed services in those bands are all very exciting. But underlying all of that is really a regulatory methodology of using dynamic sharing as a way to protect incumbent services so that we can move much faster to making spectrum available for new services. We start with the proposition that incumbent services need to be protected, and because incumbent services oftentimes don't fully utilize that spectrum, new services can be provided on a secondary basis or an opportunistic basis around them and still provide a tremendous amount of additional capacity that we desperately need in wireless communications.
So what sort of people should come to this conference? Who's going to benefit the most?
We expect to have significant attendance from regulators around the region and frankly around the world. We also expect significant industry participation, both on our panels and in the audience. We think this is going to be really the first time a conference dealing with dynamic sharing is brought to Europe, so that we can have a really robust discussion. I think policymakers are going to be interested. I think industry is going to be interested. This is the right time for this discussion.
And what would happen if we don't free up some of this spectrum? You know, what effect is it going to have?
That's a great question. I think fundamentally, spectrum is the lifeblood, as I said, of telecommunications. For 5G to be successful, for next generation networks to be successful, we need to create that kind of fabric. We think without dynamic sharing, we're either going to be waiting for a long time to free up access to spectrum, or we may really never achieve what 5G can deliver. And we think we're really part of that 5G revolution.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and best of luck as the conference planning goes forward.
Thank you very much.